two devices. Is that correct? Sorry, you're muted. I muted both of them because I think it was causing some feedback.
There we go.
Should be better now, Joe?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
I do have 6:31, so if I believe I have all of my work colleagues who are on the line now. So I think with that, I will go ahead and begin. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular regular meeting of the Kansas City Public Schools Board of Directors of March 25th, 2020. We are delighted to have those who are watching us on live stream. This is a new process that we are having to implement in response to protection during this public health situation. And so the school board is not meeting as normal at the Board of Education. We are all meeting from our respective places, and we're calling in, and we're thrilled to have public members on here with us. This is our first go-around at this type of process for a school board meeting. This is something that is happening with school boards across the state of Missouri, so we're all learning and testing our technology skills. Fortunately, in Kansas City Public Schools, we have a terrific technology team led by Mr. Joe Phillips, and there are a lot of amazing support people here to help us execute this. This will probably be one of several meetings that the school board will be conducting through this process. So please give us grace as we undertake this meeting, and we're delighted to have you join us. So with that, it is in order to do a roll call for the board members. So with this, I will ask the secretary to call the roll.
Ms. Manser?
Here.
Mr. Abarca?
Present.
Ms. Cortez?
Present.
Mr. Hogan?
Here.
Dr. Jones? Present. Mr. Wasserstrom? Ms. Wolstein?
Here.
Thank you. I would ask my colleagues to please review the agenda. It would be in order to receive a motion for approval of the agenda for this evening.
So moved. Second.
Okay. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or debate regarding the items on the agenda this evening? Hearing none, we will now do a roll call vote.
Ms. Manser?
Yes.
Mr. Abarca?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Wolstein?
Yes.
Thank you. There's a majority in favor, and the agenda is approved. The first item on the agenda is the Board of Directors report. For the presentation this evening, the chair calls on Board Treasurer Manny Abarca.
All right. Nice work, Joe. All right. So I wanted to go through our regular number slides here. So we wanted to raise to your attention, basically, this is comparing the fund balances as of right now. So if you look to the bottom left of your screens, you'll see the $50,692 million and $2, which is our current operating fund balance. And the incidental and teachers fund. For the total operations, operating capital and CNS budget, you'll see also a fund balance of $69,329,211. Just again trying to show you as the funds are coming in with revenues in these next couple slides where we're at financially. So if we can move to the next slide. this is a positive slide outcome as to some of the previous ones. If you'll look under the local revenue 5111, the current taxes, you'll see that the current local county tax revenue is at 99.5% collected. So we have received nearly all of the money that we can expect from the county at this point. So this is a positive line that has dramatically changed over the last few months. The 5112 and 5113 are also taxes that we can anticipate seeing additional revenue coming in. Again, those three lines alone are 68% of the total budget for the district in terms of the revenue that we receive in. So that is our county property tax revenue. So thank you to the taxpayers for getting those dollars in. There are still questions out there about some of the taxes paid under protest, and so I think Linda had basically said that they're too swamped at the county at this point to find out the specific numbers, but she is tracking that as well. So moving on to the other local revenues that you'll see, the line items here on the right-hand side, again, this is the percentage collected, which if you go all the way down to the bottom, we're at 90% total collected for this time, or the total to date at this point. So moving on to the intermediary, county, and state. I, again, want to bring your attention to the percentages collected. I'm going to let Linda give us a little bit more information about the intermediate county, because as you'll see, that's 0.4% that has been collected up to this point, and so the state obviously will continue to receive funds in the next couple months, so that'll be an area where we can continuously track, but I think there's some misunderstanding probably from my end as to why we're at 0.4% on the intermediate county line. So Linda, do you want to chime in real quick about that one?
Sure, happy to. So these lines are normally one payment each year. And we'll see these lines start coming in over the next few months. They'll trickle in from March through, actually we'll get, I think it's fines that comes in August, but is retro back to the prior year because, just a reminder, we're accrual based. So these come once a year and they just haven't come yet. This is not unusual. It's very typical.
Perfect. Thank you, Linda. So moving on to the next federal side. Again, you'll see our total revenue in the bottom right-hand corner there is 80.6% collected up to this point. So we are on track at this point as budgeted. Moving on to slide 7. Again, this just kind of breaks down how our revenue comes in. This is, again, the 68% of our total revenue coming from those local line items, and then the other significant lines breaking out in a proportional way. Moving on to the next slide here. We are at 67% of the fiscal year. So if you're looking for a comparable right now, that percentage on the right-hand column, we are 67% through the year. And 55% of the employees are paid, so we're right on target for budget at this point. All right. Moving on to purchase services. Again, you can see some of the tracking on the right-hand side as to the expenses given the time frame of the fiscal year. Nothing necessarily out of whack in any of these lines. Something to continuously monitor, and I know we have several line items that are over 100% at this point, and again, Linda, correct me if I'm wrong here, but as you continue to do the line items that you're pulling out into different categories, some of these may continuously change.
Correct. You're referencing the DESI coding changes where some budget is in one line, but the expenditures are going into the new DESI line, so that's the case for a couple of those overages.
Moving on to purchase services, similarly you'll see the same type of percentages on the right-hand side, so as we continue to perfect that this year, you'll see some of those changes. For supplies and materials, materials, we are still moving forward as budgeted. Still several of those lines that we're needing to have updates on as we begin to prepare for the next budgeting process, and when those kind of one-time purchases should be expensed, and I'm sure that this situation with the COVID-19 has not helped Linda find and track down some of these answers, so I want to just keep that at our awareness size, textbooks and some of those other supplies that are immediately needed at the beginning of the school year that are still at, looks like, some of the lower percentages that should probably be closer to the 80 or 90%. We're still kind of tracking some of those as well as inputting new codes. Moving on to the next slide, you'll see a breakdown of our capital outlay and the other expenditures that we have expensed thus far. And then another breakdown of our total expenses here. And you'll see 68% again of our total expenses are benefits and salaries to our staff. Going on to our investments here, just a reminder that these maturities are on pay dates to support staff cost. Remember, as Linda had said earlier, some of the payments that we receive are in larger lump sums versus being paid monthly, as one would assume most of our budgets are outlined like. And so we create these investments to allow us the cash flow that we need to maintain operations during those times. So you can see our investments lined out in that way. So, without further ado, I will open it up for questions and ask Linda to be my wonderful support as usual as they may come in.
And Mr. Marca,
yes.
will Linda Quinley speak about the current property tax collections data? That screen is up right now. Or do you want to take questions first on the other report?
Sure, I can go ahead now. So this is just, we've been keeping track since December when we were really far behind on property tax collections, watching carefully by week what our actual receipts are as compared to the budget. And so you can see when you look in that blue column of 1920, that as of last week, we did hit budget, as Mr. Abarca said a few minutes ago, on property tax collections. So at this time last year, we were at 97% of the budget, but we're at 100% this year. So it appears on the current tax calculation or collections that we're in great shape. Our delinquent taxes are running a little behind, but current taxes are on target.
Thank you so much. I'll open it up for questions, and just for the public's knowledge, I can't see all of my colleagues on the screen at the same time, so I just gently dive in, colleagues, if you have questions, because I may not be able to recognize your signaling me.
We did.
All right. Hearing no questions, thank you.
Ms. Mansler?
Yes.
Ms. Quinley, my usual question with regard to properties under appeal, it's still understanding that the collector is holding any funds that were paid in under appeal, correct?
Unless that appeal has been resolved, you are absolutely correct, Ms. Cortez.
Okay. And then my second question, and it really has only come up in the last few weeks, but in our investment portfolio, how would we manage if yields start to go negative? Would we just sit in money markets?
Right. We would be incredibly conservative, and you'll see just by the list of what we invest in that our state statutes are very restrictive because, of course, we want to be very conservative with taxpayer dollars. And so we're going to be in these pretty stable kinds of investments. But if we get down to where we're at almost nothing in that rate category, or we're starting to have negative yields, then we'll drop as much money as collateral will allow into these money markets and overnight repo accounts.
Okay, thanks.
My question is, Mr. Abarca, Ms. Quinley, we know that in April is when the board will start to do some public discussion about the budgeting. Is there anything you want to just remind everyone regarding that activity that will happen in April?
Yeah, I'll yield to Linda since I have 3 screens and apparently can't find the document she sent over with all those dates.
This technology meeting's a little tougher than you think it will be, isn't it?
No joke.
Just sharing again, as we talked last month, that we're on target through our budget process. Requests are in. We're at our second round of revenue assumptions, which is great, right? Because revenue assumptions 6 weeks ago might be very different than they look today based on the last 3 to 4 weeks. So we're redoing our revenue projections right now. We're on target to have a public budget hearing in April. It's currently scheduled for April 22nd. And then we would like to bring a budget document before the board on May 27th. And just a reminder, by statute, it has to be approved by June 30th.
Thank you so much. And so one of the things I know that we've talked about earlier today is that the board very much wants public engagement and dialogue on the budget. So our board treasurer and members of the administration will work to find a way to make that process user-friendly. Are there any final questions on this agenda item? Thank you so much, Mr. Barca, Ms. Quinley. The next item on the agenda is the Superintendents Report. The chair recognizes Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize, Dr. Bedell. I jumped ahead. I apologize. I have an ad hoc committee report item. My apologies. So I believe we may have an ad hoc committee report from Ms. Woolsey.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate that. Sorry, Dr. Bedell.
I'm not in a rush. I can't go anywhere.
This week, just so I think most people know this, but the legislature is actually on their spring break. Last week, the Senate did not meet, and the House did meet to work specifically on the budget. But as we all know, things are changing fairly rapidly. We've had one legislator actually diagnosed with COVID-19. The governor ended up ordering the state capitol closed until Monday, April 6th. So right now, just so everyone knows, just another date to keep in mind is that typically the budget must be passed by the end of session, which would be May 8th. I believe it's Friday, May 8th. So the House did pass, I believe, the budget, but the Senate, of course, needs to come back and take it up, and it's just a little bit in limbo right now when that would take place, if they will come back after April 6th. But if and when, because one of the other things that could, there's some other chatter going on that typically the budget must be passed by May 8th. Given the certain circumstances, there may be an opportunity to pass a resolution to keep things moving and then come back in special session. That's something else that has been talked about. But if the legislature does reconvene, obviously they'll take up the budget, but there could be some other high priority items that might also be addressed. And we've kind of heard that there's been virtual chatter around charter funding and possibly the property tax fix that Eggleston had worked as a committee and then had proposed some legislation around. Those could be priorities. So as we have already been doing, but KCPS will just need to be able to respond extremely quickly to ensure that these bills continue to address the concerns we've been testifying to and meeting with legislators about. And of course, we will keep you up to date. I think we have a board meeting on April 8th as well that we will bring new information to the public as we know it.
Thank you. Is there any additional questions or comments from board members?
Ms. Woolsey, this is Nate Hogan. Thanks for the update. Quick question for you. As the community is listening to this, specific to the budget items coming out of Jeff City that are of concern for the district, are there things that the community can do to help support us as those things start to sort of reveal themselves? when the session, or when, legislators get back in session? Are there specific things the community can do to help us?
I think that's a great question or comment. I think that, one, we need to just stay on top of what is going to move and isn't going to move. Obviously, funding is going to be a big thing that we'll keep an eye on. And what we will try to continue to do, although I think this new normal is we had created a legislative e-list to keep people apprised of things that were moving through the legislature. Those people that want to try and assist us with having their voice heard down in Jefferson City will, I hope, try to continue that. I know that our communications team is extremely busy right now, but that I think what we should use is our platform here during board meetings, but also I think as board members, we'll continue to try to get the word out through those of us that are on social media, and then work with our own communications department to try and continue to get that legislative email out, and then can carry that through as we can through social media as well. I think, given what's going on in the world today, it's hard to, I think, cut through some of the clutter, but as you can, try to be strategic about reaching the people that might be able to help get our needs and our points of view through to legislators. We can try to do the best that we can.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that report. And now I'd like to turn over the next item to Superintendent Mark Bedell. Thank you.
Madam Chair, just a couple of items, and this is very important. Many people are wondering what's the district's plans, not only short-term but long-term, as it pertains to COVID-19. And so I really want to spend my full superintendent's report, giving the board and the community a full update on where the district is as it pertains to this issue, and to also, to the best of my ability, give you all some assurances that the school district is being as proactive as we could possibly be as we react to this natural disaster, so to say, that we're dealing with right now. So a couple of items. I want to present it to you in this format. I'm going to kind of give a general overview of everything that I've been doing as superintendent and who I've been interacting with, and ultimately then push it to what we're doing more locally as it pertains to food distribution, making sure that our facilities are sanitized and clean, over to what we're doing academically, where we are right now, what our plans are if we have to move more long-term with students being out and having to try to embrace this virtual aspect of teaching and learning. And then to pass it over to our communications team, where Kelly Wacher will give an update on everything that we've been doing around communications. So let me give you the overview of everything. As you all know, every single school district in the state of Missouri is shut down, and we know that this is a trend that's happening nationally across the country. Those closures, in most cases, are done to, in essence, to protect our community and to make sure that we're also protecting those who are vulnerable, whether it's employees within our organization or folks that may have health issues that will further perpetuate the death rate. And we just don't want to be a part of that. And so we felt that the best decision was to close the school systems down to kind of give us an opportunity to not have more of these cases spreading that's happening more locally from people to people. And I think that was a big conversation that we've had with the superintendents here with the Greater Kansas City Cooperating School Districts. We all came to a consensus that this was the best thing to do. We interacted with our health department, we interacted with the mayor's office, and came to a decision was the best thing. Not only that, I'm also on phone calls with superintendents from the Council of Great City Schools. These are the largest urban school districts that's a part of this group. And we're able to hear what other school districts are doing nationally. And the beautiful part about being able to be a part of that group is that there are districts that are ahead of us. So when you think about what's happened in Washington, the stuff that's happening in New York right now, LA. So we are able to talk to those superintendents around what is it that they've done, given that in some cases, some of these superintendents are a month ahead of where Missouri is, and, getting hit pretty hard, and they've been shut down for a while. And so being able to learn some of the best practices there, what we're doing in Kansas City is also being highlighted on the Council for Great City Schools website. So anybody can click on the link. You can go to our school district. Everything that we have there is available for people to look at, not only nationally, but internationally. And we do feel pretty good about what we were able to do in this short period of time to make sure that we don't have experiences with a lot of learning loss or regression as a result of having to shut down in a short period of time. Where we are now is we're going to continue. We will remain closed until the 24th. The 24th is when we're all scheduled to open back up, and that means we would come back on the 27th. We, at this point, we're looking and monitoring the numbers. We are seeing that the cases are continuing to rise here in the state of Missouri. So we, at this point, will get back together probably sometime during that week of April 6th. And continue to have our conversations as a cohort of superintendents and working with our elected officials, working with our board of directors, working with the state to make an informed decision so that if we have to extend this, our community knows well in advance. And then our goal is to begin to focus on how do we make sure from an equity standpoint that our families that don't have the ability to have internet at home, that the district's going to be in a position to help provide support through hotspots. That will be one of our asks that we will ask of this board in an emergency manner to approve so that we can go ahead and get some hotspots ordered. And also, if we need additional laptops or whatnot, get those things ordered. That is one of the lessons I learned from the big school districts. Miami-Dade, which is probably the 4th largest district or 5th largest district in the country, is full-blown virtual. But part of that is they also were able to get ahead of this, knowing what was coming in Florida. They were able to order enough laptops to also to be able to handle that absorption of the 25% that may not come back for whatever reason, whether they're damaged or something happens. So a lot of your big districts have already gotten ahead. So you got a lot of technology companies that are behind with orders, because also the productivity from China has kind of slowed down and in some cases ceased, and we're hearing that it's going to get ready to rev back up. But that has put us behind the 8 ball with a lot of this stuff, which is the reason why we wanted to make sure that we went packets to make sure that every single one of our students, whether they have internet or not, have access to those work packets. So we have addressed it in that manner, and we think that we have in our conversations with T-Mobile, Sprint, and some of the other companies, we believe we'll be able to get, because of some of our partnerships, some of these supplies and materials in at a much faster rate that would allow for us, if we have to extend, to be able to make sure that we can take care of our kids and our families during the month of May. Now, with that, there's a lot of logistical things that we have to figure out, and those are the things that we will continue to work on. We will continue to update the board as we think about how do we distribute these products, how do we collect them back, how do we make sure that we're going to be ready for the opening of the school year in August? And so those are a lot of logistical things that we're working on right now as we try to move our way through this process. But what I wanted to do was to kind of give the community an update, and we'll start with Ms. Quinley from the food distribution standpoint, how things turned out in day one, and then tomorrow we go back at it where we'll be providing more food to our community and also some hygiene kits for our community and some books, I believe, too. So for some activities for our students to utilize. And then to also, Linda, where we are with cleaning our facilities, and then we'll move it over to Dr. Shepard. And I would ask that once you complete your portion of this update, the board could then ask you questions, and then we would move over to Dr. Shepard, who can give academic updates and some of the things that we're kind of working our way through. And then we'll close it out with Kelly Waitcher around the communication piece. We can ask questions, and then that would conclude the superintendent's report. So, Ms. Quinley.
Great, thank you. So we just are getting ready for day 2 of our 4-site distribution of food tomorrow. Dr. Bedell mentioned we've been making that effort. So backing up to earlier this week, we started on Monday, delivering a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, two days worth of meals in each of those to our homeless students, our McKinney-Vento students, and to our special education students. So in the 2 deliveries for Monday and Wednesday, we delivered over 5,000 meals to roughly 1,700 to 1,800 kids in those special high needs categories. Tuesday at our distribution sites, our 4 sites, I think you probably saw the story in the Star that a lot of schools that are doing this did not see high traffic in those days. We didn't see as high traffic as we expected either, but had a little bigger numbers than most of what you saw otherwise. We did serve almost 1,700 kids between those 4 sites yesterday and served about 6,700 meals because, again, they got 2 breakfasts and 2 lunch for each child that went out the door. We're set and ready to do that again tomorrow. We found that our busiest time was from 1 to 6 on Tuesday, so we don't know what tomorrow will bring. We expect the weather's going to be a little nicer. That day might change, but we're prepared for all of our kids if they show up tomorrow with those meals. We did end up, because once food's come out of the cooler and been out of the cooler for a period of time, it doesn't go back in the cooler. We had waste of about 140 meals, and we took about 250 to a homeless shelter the other evening nearby East High School. So we're trying to waste as little of that, of those meals as we can. We have about 40 children that are on a highly specialized diet, like perhaps pureed foods or extreme allergies, and we're doing daily service to those homes for those students. So really reaching out to those populations. We have, as Dr. Bedell mentioned, we've got about 4,000 hygiene kits that have been donated to us. Those are going to be at distribution sites. They ended up coming a little later today than expected, so they'll be at our site next week versus tomorrow. And then we have some reading books as well for elementary children that came in. They also had a little difficulty in getting their books, and so they just came in, so they'll probably be at our sites next week as well. But that's good, because by then we'll understand how to do this, and it'll be a good flow to add those items to that. Probably important to note the kinds of things we're starting to be concerned about are food distribution of those prepackaged items like Crustables, which, if you don't know what that is, it's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in the round that doesn't have a crust on it that almost all children love if they don't have peanut allergies. Those kinds of things are great in these meals, but they're also becoming, that kind of thing is becoming harder and harder to come by just because a lot of schools and other organizations are trying to support with feeding families. What we've learned just tonight is that now the paper products like a clamshell or either a foam or a plastic clamshell, and even bags, paper bags and plastic bags, are really going to be hard for us to get when we hit some period of time, and that's because restaurants have all transitioned to to-go. So now the items that we didn't struggle with before are starting to become harder to come by. So we're just going to, roll with the flow and determine how we need to adjust and monitor and be ready to pivot. I spoke with Dr. Bedell this morning about maybe some transition plans for next week. Spent about 3 hours with the ops leaders today going through that. We're going to assess tomorrow, and then we'll see how we deliver and how we distribute next week and going forward. So the other component then is the cleaning process, and we're using a 3-clean process. The first is we actually clean the surface and sanitize the surface. Then we disinfect with specifically a product that has coronavirus listed as one of the things that this agent will kill. And then step 3 is we come back and spray with a Clorox 360 machine and just spray all of the surfaces, and that is hydrostatic, so it kind of dries away, but it leaves kind of that coating, that Cloroxy kind of coating on there, so that continues to clean. We started doing some of this, and then when we went into the shutdown mode, we're not in our buildings right now doing that, so that we have as many people home as possible to really be in alignment with the mayor's social distancing and requests that only those necessary and critical are out. We will bring them back in before school is going to be open in order to make sure we've touched every surface in every building before it's time for students and teachers to return.
Any questions?
Are there any questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just
I
gonna
take my mic. Sorry. Hey, Linda, thanks for the update. And so let me start by saying, really appreciate all of the stuff that you guys are doing. I mean, we hear about it as, part of our communications with the district as a board, but then you see it, right? And you hear about it in the community, you see it on social media, all the feedback. You can just tell that even given the fact that we had to prepare for this in an instant almost, it's been an impressive operation to watch. So thank you, to every one of your leaders, to every one of the folks that are on the line actually getting this work done. It's super meaningful and valuable to this community in a way that it's going to be hard for people to really sort of express, I think, even over the long term. So I just want to kind of start by thanking you guys for the tremendous effort that you're putting into this. It's not easy, but you're blessed with a great leadership team. So question for you, I feel like I read in Murray's Star article or someone's article a number of 40,000 meals. Where does that number come from? Because I didn't hear you talk about that.
Right, so we do prep ahead because again, we're using a lot of shelf-stable product. And so what we did was we spent last week, and when you talk about our teams, our Child Nutrition Services team, and with some support from some of our custodial leadership, has really been putting in the time and the energy to make sure we were ahead of the curve. We did not want to show up on Tuesday and get hit with 15,000 kids times 4 meals and not be prepared. So we made a high estimate of what we'd have Tuesday and Thursday, knowing these were shelf stable, all in coolers. We have every cooler across the district filled with bagged meals right now. And so we're ready to serve 40,000 this week. It doesn't look like we're going to do that because we've only hit about 12,000 at this point. So we'll probably do somewhere in the 25,000 meals this week. But again, that 40,000, we're still making those. Some of those will roll into next week because they'll be fine based on the product in the bag and the fact the bags are in the cooler.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? Ms. Quinley, I have a question, and maybe someone else will be able to jump in. In terms of the home delivery of food, what stuffing are we using for that? Is that how we use drivers, or who are the teams of individuals? And I'm just wondering that process of keeping people sort of employed, and if you could just say something about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking because I should have shared that. One of the first conversations we had is that since our budget is set and aligned to be able to make sure our staff don't have payroll interruptions or benefit interruptions, it's a greater challenge for those cab companies that we rely on every day and the bus drivers that we rely on every day who are not our employees. So that's one of the ways that we're making sure some revenue stream flows to those companies. Again, we've got budget to run 150 buses a day and 400 cabs a day. We're not using anywhere near that, but it is bus drivers and cab drivers that are making those deliveries. So in every cab, there is a cab driver who's running the route. There's a bus driver who is getting the meal to the door and making that contact interaction with the families so that, again, we can keep more people working.
Thank you.
Patty, can I ask, this is Jennifer. I also want to echo Nate, but because you guys are doing a fantastic job. My question is around knowing, and Linda, you and I have had this conversation over the last couple of days, knowing we're all just doing this for the first time and figuring it out as we go. Clearly, we're going to find things that we need to do better, right? Here and there, both on the food and on the academics and all that. And Kelly, even on some of the communication. What is the way we are doing the feedback? What mechanism are we using to try and get that information so we can every day or every 2 days, maybe on food, get better at this? and it's not just for you, Linda, I guess it's for you and Kelly and on the academic side, like each group, like what are you hoping to get? What can we communicate out to people? What do we need to tell them to tell us? Is it press, let's talk, or I don't know. Let us know what we need to do.
Let me start off with that. Let me answer that one. Yeah, to your point, we definitely want to know that. And I have been, I try to stay off of Twitter, but I'll be very clear. I've been on it quite a bit lately, and I've been getting some feedback on Twitter from some teachers and some concerned parents, whether it's around, who to actually talk to with academic packets or things of that nature. And I would say the best way for, in my opinion, and Kelly, you can weigh in on this, email us, tweet us. I mean, because you're right, there's not going to be a lot of people right there on site. So if you're calling the office, we're being told that we have to practice social distancing. So that means you're not going to have a lot of executive admin assistants or admin assistants in the BOE. But the best way to reach us generally would be through email, through Let's Talk, because we can still pull up Let's Talk, and in our website. Just, and then every time we've gotten something, we've been able to respond immediately. And so, for instance, 2 kids received the wrong packet, and we kind of seeing a trend here with what potentially could have happened with the company boxing the work packets and then putting it in the wrong grade box. And as we're trying to get through, we're putting them in these envelopes trying to get it out so we can get it distributed. So that's a scenario where I was easily able to say, okay, send me the name of the students. They sent me the Tyler clip. I got the student address. We printed copies, and then our goal was to go and hand deliver. And we have a ton of people that are willing to volunteer. They're asking us, how can we help? We want to be a part of the solution. So we want to taper that, and we're trying to utilize a small group of people that are trained and understand how to, protect themselves to get these packages delivered. But we will hand deliver. We will do what we need to do to support people, and then just come and talk to us, because we're on those sites on Tuesday and Thursdays. I learned a lot being at Central yesterday, a whole lot. And now we have a better system already in place for tomorrow based on some of the things that I was able to see personally being at Central and watching how we were doing our system.
Yep, and I would add to that, great points, Dr. Bedell. I've loved that our superintendent will engage on Twitter with our families, and that's a really great thing for him to do during this time, so thanks, Dr. Bedell. We have received approximately 5 to 7 Let's Talk items in regards to feedback or maybe concerns about whether it's personal delivery or those learning packets, and we have addressed those each personally through Linda, through academics, or through communications. And also, we are almost real-time responding to social media comments on Twitter and on Facebook to anyone who has a concern or has a hang-up with their learning packets or the meal delivery. So if you have a chance to look on our Facebook or Twitter platforms and look at those real-time responses, we're getting really good feedback about the gratitude for how quickly we're responding and then addressing their concern. Like Dr. Bedell said, those deliveries of packets or those deliveries of meals, they're happening almost instantaneously between transportation, between Linda's team, between Marla and Trinity working through the academic packet side, again, those printed off. So again, Let's Talk is a great way, social media is a great way, emailing us directly. We have put the helpline, which is the IT help desk, is being our catch-all for any calls that come into the district, and they're doing a fantastic job of addressing those right away through any of our Let's Talk items that come in. And if Joe's on the call, he might want to address that as well, but that help desk has been fantastic for those calls, for that 418 food number and that food at kcpublicschools.org. They've been really trying to address those in real time.
And I will say this, board, I did personally reach out and try to call that family and call the cell phone today, because I was actually going to hand deliver those packets to them. And so I think, even as you think about executive level employees in our system, none of us, we're willing to get in the trenches and do whatever we need to do to make sure that, we provide for our community And so, they didn't answer, so wasn't going over there to just pop up. So I gave it to our person, Becky, who will be handling all of those types of situations for us.
Additionally, one thing to add as well, as we think about our learning packets and how Dr. Shepard will address kind of that blended learning approach after April 6th, we will work with our principals and our teachers really closely in communication to make sure that we're on the same page of what's going home to our families so that those learning packets can be understood by both the teachers and the kids as they can help each other through those.
Can I ask one further question about, I know you said you're encouraging teachers to that. It occurs to me that now teachers have also kind of become, in a way, for so many of our families, because, I'm sure I'm curious how many of our families are on Twitter, social media, and whatnot, and how many are going to kind of really rely on their former teacher, perhaps, as one way of staying connected to the school, not only for academics, but about just information about, for instance, food distribution. So are the teachers at all involved in, are they being considered a part of the communication strategy of how to get information out to students?
Yes, and that was kind of my point in having the principals and teachers through our communications have some of the same messaging and talking points, Ms. Wilkie. And then specifically to your point about those teachers and counselors are really points of contact for our kids. I've had a couple counselors reach out to me and ask for specifics around the food distribution, those one-off delivery type things, because the kids and families are reaching out to those school level folks like counselors, and so they're being really on the first line of responding and doing a great job of being available for our kids and families.
Great,
So I wanted to check to see if there were other board members who have questions for Ms. Quinley before we transition. I think, Dr. Bill, you wanted an update from Dr. Shepard and also a more formal one from Kelly Wachel. So are there additional questions right now, board members, for Ms. Quinley? Okay, Dr. Bill, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before Dr. Shepard starts, I did, I try to offer accommodations, and you have to do it publicly, and unfortunately, we're not there where people can see our faces and really understand, just see the expression. But I do want to commend our Linda's team, the custodial team, the food services team. These people, I mean, they, just being around them yesterday, just their excitement about feeling like they're making a difference. And we know right now, with a lot of fear that's existing in the community, we actually have more people wanting to help serve than we need, even with our employees. And we're having to now probably scale back and tell people, as much as we want to utilize you, we can't. I don't know what to say. I'm moved by this, and even being at East yesterday and talking to a couple of our principals as we get ready to move into the academic discussion. I'm watching one principal have a Zoom meeting, a faculty meet with all of his teachers. I walk over, I say hi to all of them. These people are being very motivated, very aggressive. They're not just trying to wait on the district to tell them what to do. I'm a parent, so I would use my teacher as an example. Today, she did a Zoom lunch meeting with the kids, and it was basically like an hour for them to just get together and socialize. So you're watching these third graders, first, second, and third graders, because that's how they do it in Montessori, all interacting. The teacher said, hey, do you need any support with your packet? And it was just great seeing that. And just seeing how the kids are connecting. And so for me, there are a number of kids that can't do that right now because they don't have the resources. And this is the thing that I do want to say that I really appreciate about this board and the previous board that I worked with. You all gave us this authority to build this infrastructure. And I think Joe and his team has done a phenomenal job of building that. And that's the other team that I really have to commend. but we have a solid infrastructure now that we're going to be able to have the bandwidth to do this. And, I'm saying closing remarks now, but I'm just going to say it. Education is not going to look the same after we get through this experience. It will not look the same prior to what happened, and it's going to force us to have to embrace things differently, to be more bold in our thinking, to provide that rich experience that we want for every single one of our students. So, Dr. Shepard, I'll move it over to you now, but I have been, pleasantly pleased with just what I'm seeing with our teachers and their outreach and their concern for our students.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to have to refer to my cheat sheet because we have so much that we've been doing. I don't want to miss anything. So, and I'm not going to share the screen because I don't want to overwhelm you. But, so we have a task force. We have a KCPS Blended Learning Task Force, and there are lots of us from the district office. Represented departments are curriculum instruction, professional development, school leadership, special ed, early childhood, English language learners, the digital learning team, and then our network leads. And then we have 8 principals that are on the task force, and they represent elementary, middle, and high school. The first thing that we did was we put together the packets, and the packets are standards that have been previously taught. We didn't feel like it would be good for us to introduce anything new at this time. Standards that students showed average performance on and may need minimal support. So our goal here is maintenance. And when we came together as a team, we said we discussed what would our goal would be for the next, let's say, 6 to 8 weeks. We don't know how long we'll be out. But our goal is to maintain student learning and to aid students in consistency with schools. So basically, maintenance and consistency, those are the 2 key words in our goal here. So keeping that in mind, that's how we approach every situation. We had online professional development on Monday. Monday was a PD day for our teachers. And so half the day was PD and the other half was them meeting, doing their own independent work. And all of our principals met with their staff at 12 o'clock noon. That was our time. And we pushed out our digital learning team and our school leadership and curriculum instruction team all got together and we created an agenda. So every principal had the same agenda. And then after that, they could do whatever it was that they wanted to do. And that agenda discuss some expectations as far as teacher behavior with children, making sure that, we're not interacting with children with pajamas on, making sure that the hours that we interact with children are decent. Between, our time is between 9 and 3 o'clock p.m. every day. Now, if teachers want to go beyond that, then they get the opportunity to make that decision, but the policy that we have says that teachers should not be interacting with children at any other time than between 6 a.m. and 10 o'clock p.m. So it's pretty loose. We're just asking between 9 and 3. So then the packets went out. We started the packets on Thursday. So Thursday, Friday. We came in on Sunday, and then we had some to come in on Monday to get some packets out. The only thing we had to do on Monday was 8th grade because, again, there was a discrepancy with the boxes. They gave us too many 10th grade, and they put 10th grade packets in 8th grade boxes. So by the time we discovered that, we'd already sent all the other ones out, so we didn't think to go look in the other ones prior to Sunday. Let's see. Teacher responsibilities, where teachers were supposed to contact all students and provide them with their Google Voice number. Joe and his team set up every teacher with a Google Voice number so that students didn't have access to their actual cell phone numbers. The teachers were told to make contact with any student that has not been engaged after the first 2 days. So we started Tuesday and today is Wednesday. So any student that hadn't engaged at this point, we're making personal contact with. I've not heard a lot, and I'm going to get the assistant SUS to chime in. I've not heard teachers that say that they had not engaged with the majority of their students. Then they have virtual PLCs, and so that is an expectation. Now, for our special education and our English language learners, we actually have a plan. that our special ed team has put together and our English language learner department has put together so that students can have modified content if when needed. We even have a special ed hotline for students to access. So if they're not able to get support from their teacher or they need additional support, they can access the hotline. The hotline rings to several of our special ed co-teachers, and so it's whoever is available at that time that will pick up that call. Principal responsibilities, they would maintain contact with all teachers, work with families if packets are incomplete or wrong. They maintain daily office hours and participate in virtual meetings with assistant superintendents and with staff. And we're asking our staff just to document for us who are you in contact with. So right now, we're just trying to make sure that every kid has a packet for these first 10 days. We have started our communication around what happens after April 6th. They have worked through April 6th, and we've had some really good conversations about that. We had my instructional team and school leadership had our meeting yesterday, and then we collaborated with Joe and his team today to talk about the instruction and the technology devices and internet access. So those are the three main things that we talked about. And instructionally, we've decided that we're introducing no new standards for the rest of this year. If we don't, in the event that we don't go back to school, because we feel like right now, in keeping with our goal of maintenance, we want to maintain, and we'd rather kids be strong in 5 to 10 things than us to just go through and touch 20 things. Because I think we can build on the things that our team has decided are the things that we really need to focus on. CIPD is creating a new curriculum map or pacing guide for teachers with the standards to be covered throughout the end of the school year. Again, it's maintenance that is our goal. New standards will potentially be introduced in the summer program. We're looking at now, how do we begin? We don't know how to plan summer school right now because we don't even know when we're going back to school. But we are talking about introducing the newer topics in summer school and working with our principals to use their influence on getting all of our kids to come, because we need to see all of our kids. Although I think we really bought into this blended model. So we're looking at how can we continue with this blended model, where kids are coming to school some, and then they're also doing some at home. So there'll be more discussion about that. We're already doing that with our high school kids during the summer. Then teachers will utilize Google Classroom to assign work to students. And as far as grades are concerned, I think with the committee, what our task force decided is the assignments will be solely for the purpose of practicing. The grades will be given based on the quizzes that we assign to students. We have several mediums that we can use to assign quizzes. We have Discovery Ed, we have Envision 2.0, EdSite, and that's to do quick checks. So there might be 5 questions over the work that they've been assigned. And that's how we'll get our actual grades instead of teachers trying to grade a lot of worksheets. We will, and we can use Google Classroom to assign quizzes to kids. And the good thing about it is the mediums that we're using, they actually grade them for the teacher. So once the kids click submit, then there's a grade that's assigned to those quizzes. And then looking at the devices, we realized that we are going to have to distribute devices to K-8. So we started that conversation as well. And we are currently adding language to the languages in the student handbook. Joe and his team are responsible for that. They'll modify the forms in the student handbook and add verbiage with approval from legal as far as getting parents to sign a release form for students. And Javier Alfonso is working on, we actually have a medium where the parents can do digital signatures, which will help us a whole lot as far as when we interact with parents, having them to sign papers and just that additional process. what we will do is we'll push the form out and get them to do an electronic signature. So when they come, all they're doing is driving through, picking up the computer and moving on. Our plan is to issue one device per family, so that our people, our principals who are actually going in won't be there for long. I know that people are concerned about their interaction, and so that we can get people in and out. If we can get one laptop to every family and one hotspot to every family, then that works better for all of us. And working with our principals on, if a teacher is actually doing a Zoom meeting with the students, making sure that kindergarten has a time, first grade, second, and on up through 8th grade, that there's a time. So if there's more than one kid in the household, and let's say one is in first, one is in third, and one is in fourth, then the meetings don't happen at the same time, so they can share the device. And we're looking at having 2 stations when the parents come through to pick up the devices. One for students that have electronic signatures already done, and one for the parents who have not signed, so we can move very quickly. And we'll be working with Kelly and her team tomorrow, so that we can over-communicate this to parents. It'll be coming from our principals, it'll be coming from the district level, and parents will know that our distribution will happen April 6th, April 7th, and April 8th. And principals will work with 2 to 3 campus level staff and 1 IT rep. So a team of 5 will be on campuses helping with the distribution. Joe has ordered scanners and they are all in. So kudos to Joe and his team. That will streamline this process. They will scan the codes on the back of the computer, and Joe, you can talk in detail if there are questions about this. And the good part about this is kids don't necessarily have to pick up from their zone school, especially if they are signature school students. They don't have to pick it up from their actual school. They can go to the school that's closest to them, and the scanner will still get the student's ID number and register it to their school, and we'll know that we have a device that belongs to KCPS. And I think that's a lot of what we have been. That's a lot.
So I would like to open it up for some questions for Dr. Shepard.
Marla, this is Mark Wasserstrom. Do we have any statistics on what percentage of the students have been interacting with the school district via the computer during the closed down period? I mean, are we getting like 100% messaging back and forth between the district and the students?
Well, we haven't had anything except the survey, and Joe can speak to the survey that his team sent out, but we haven't really had any, when you say interaction, are you mean contact from the teacher to the student, or do you mean just participation in surveys or participation in online resources?
From what I understand, on every computer, people can ping back and forth. So if I'm an advertiser, I can put an ad on the computer. I can tell how many people receive the ad, how many people open the ad. If you have the software, you can do that automatically.
Yeah, that's a question for Joe.
Joe, can you
Sure, yeah. So where we're at right now is getting ready to distribute our devices. So we've sent out a survey so far to see a percentage of our families that would need Wi-Fi hotspots from us as well as devices from us. So out of the 6,617 K-8 families, we're looking at about half of them that need a hotspot right now, and about half of them that need a device right now. Once the devices and the hotspots are out, we do have software that is on the computers that will go out, and we'll be able to pull reports
with that software, so we'll be able to see how often the students are engaging with the different websites that we're doing. So if it's Seesaw, if it's Google Classroom, if it's YouTube, we'll be able to see what those students are doing, which students are logged in. We'll be able to pull those reports by teacher, by school, by zone, or however we want to aggregate or disaggregate that data. So if we're not getting a lot of interactions at one of our schools or one of our teachers' classrooms, we can give that data over to Dr. Shepard and her assistant superintendent so they can take interventions on that. Does that help?
That's great.
Dr. Shepard, this is Marvia. I just want to thank you again for all the work that your team is doing, and I'm sorry I'm having some lighting challenges on my end. But I wanted to just ask a couple questions. So first, do you guys feel like there's a kind of an understood among building administrators and teachers, like an understood baseline expectation as to what they should be doing during this process? So Dr. Bedell gave an example of someone who was going above and beyond, or might have been, as far as holding actual meetings with students via Zoom, whereas some people haven't heard from their teachers. And so I'm wondering, do you feel like this has been sort of the transition week, and standards are being set going into the next 2 weeks, or how do you see that playing out?
Well, tomorrow, every kid should have heard from their teacher. That's the expectation, because we tell all principals that to communicate to their teachers that if you have not heard from the kid in 2 days, then we need to reach out. So it is an expectation that by the end of the day tomorrow, that if they have not heard from them, they're reaching out so that we can get closer and closer to 100%. And then as our goal for our principals, we actually expect our principals to be meeting regularly with their teachers just to touch base, and it may not be but a 15-minute or 10-minute meeting, but we are asking them to meet with their teachers regularly.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question that I had was, when we think about the future, so we know that there are some districts kind of around the country that have already transitioned to instruction, like actual instruction, and I know earlier we're still kind of gathering our legs about this process now. We see, so after the April 6th time period, or the April 27th time has come and passed, if and when it happens, do you see more of an emphasis on instruction? I guess I know that there are equity concerns around, who has access, and what does it look like for some people to be moving ahead while others are not having access? I totally get that. But there's also concern from the community that there are 6 communities that are moving ahead, and then KCPS as a whole, so there are 14,000 students or so, will we just kind of be stuck while some people are moving ahead? I mean, how would you all like for us to support what we're doing and also discuss this with the community?
Our goal, we feel like this is an opportunity, that everything that has happened, we've been a one-to-one district for quite some time now, and it's been a slow process of getting everybody on board. But we feel that with the supports that we have in place now, we're actually pulling people on board, and this has been a good, a stimulus, to get all of us together and to get everybody.
And Joe's happy. Look how hard he's smiling over here. This is what he's going to do. So, Joe, I'm happy right now, too, because we're going to do this.
Yeah, and so it's forcing all of us. I every day from our digital learning team, just learning something new every day about this whole process and how to make a video and post the video, how to share a screen. And so I think this is a great opportunity for all of us to step out there and to learn more than what we have previously known. And what I anticipate is that learning will never be the same. And that is our hope, that is our goal. And so as we push all of these things out, we are piloting all of them. And this is a great time for us to pilot so that as we begin constructing what happens in the future, we know what works, what doesn't work, what we need more professional development on. And it's been great. We have a module for our teachers around instructional support, technology support. And a lot of our teachers just, quite frankly, had not been participating, even though we were paying, and we call it PD in your pajamas. So you could just, the modules are all online for teachers to access. But I will tell you, now we have a whole, it's been a huge increase in the numbers of teachers who are participating because they're beginning to realize that this is not going away. As we issue these laptops to students, we are expecting every teacher to be engaged in technology with their students. And so many of them are getting ahead before we issue the laptops, and they're getting on and they're participating in our instructional technology modules. And as we look forward, we do anticipate that all of these resources that we're getting, and we've got 3 RFPs out right now, and one of the main things that we put in the RFP is that we wanted a technology tool. And so now we will know that our teachers know how to utilize these technology tools because this has hit us by force. And so all of us having to take a new, just go in a new direction and learn some new things. And so, and the short answer to your question is, what we hope to achieve from all of this is that learning will never be the same, and that we are going to become a truly one-to-one integrated district. And I know we had some conversation the other day about, hey, do we need to move forward with this? And we were saying absolutely. I think the school leadership team, the instructional support team, the technology team, we were all just, we felt like this is something that we just need to do. We need to move forward quickly, get the laptops distributed, and get everybody online so that we can further, I guess, look at how we perfect this process as we move into the school year.
Yeah, and I would just like to add that as we're looking at our technology footprint, as Dr. Bedell alluded to earlier, we spent the last 2 years completely rebuilding our infrastructure, and we did that in a way to future-proof, to go towards this one-to-one model, this blended learning model. And to be honest, I'm not interested in keeping up with our neighboring districts. I want to leapfrog those neighboring districts so they have to look back at KCPS and see what we're doing. And our infrastructure is there. We finished those infrastructure projects in December, right before all this started. And when we're looking at our device purchases right now, as I'm working with vendors around the country, I can tell you we're one of the only districts that's not just chasing the virus. So we're getting a little beefed up for the devices that we need right now for the next 2 months, but we're also one of the only districts out there trying to make sure we're getting our device purchases in for next school year. So what's happening a lot is the big districts are grabbing with the inventory right now. We're going ahead and going to request the stuff we need for next year as well, because we know those device channels are going to dry up. So we want to get those now. So you'll see as we get to the business items tonight, kind of how that's going to line out. But it's absolutely because we're changing how we're going to be doing instruction in the district going forward.
Okay, well, thank you. And yeah, no, I appreciate that. I was just, I was kind of stuck on, I got to be honest, I've been stuck on this part about we're just going to be in a maintenance pattern, and then, so I'm glad to hear there's a plan for how do we do instruction at some point.
Yeah, because Dr. Jones, is really, to your point, it's really difficult to be in a position right now to try to start teaching new standards, and everybody doesn't have everything that they need, right? That creates that more of that divide that we have within our community. And we also know that the commissioner suspended assessments for this year. So it's not going to hurt us to review and then make sure that we do this right, that we get these devices and everybody has something in their hands. So when we get ready to go this summer, we're ready to rock and roll, right? We can start introducing new concepts and actually start to have our kids be strengthened a little bit more prior to them, getting into, prior to them coming back in August. But the truth is, like we already learned, while we're moving fast, we've already made a number of mistakes. And a lot of these mistakes they've been easy for us to fix and repair so that we get better. And it's going to be the same with this process, right? It's just anytime you go through some implementation, you're going to have an implementation dip. It's a normal process in anything that we do in life when we're trying to learn something new. So everybody's going to experience a level of discomfort. And I think a level of discomfort is normal. It's okay If we're a little nervous, we're a little scared, it's okay. If you're not, something's wrong with you. Because I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm nervous right now too, but this is what we have to do. We have to do this.
Yeah, and Dr. Jones, and just regarding your concern around the maintenance portion, I'm just talking to parents. Like there's a lady that I was talking to today who has children at Banneker, and she told me, she said, well, I've got my boxes at my house. Her boxes are already packed. They're about to move. That's number one. Number two, she said she picked up 2 jobs. So she has 2 jobs right now because the main job she had is not providing her with the hours that she needs. And so she's away from her kids a whole lot. And she's got 3 kids. And 2 of them in our system, 1 is not, and she's bringing that one back next year. But having the conversation, and when I hear parents give me those type stories, the inequity would come in if we tried to teach that child something new right now when that child is not in a stable situation. Their box is packed and they're about to move. The parent is at work. She says, I picked up an extra job, so she leaves one at 2 o'clock and she goes to another one for 3:30 and she gets home late after that. So I'm listening to this parent and I'm thinking, okay, we've got to make the right decision for every kid. And all of them can stand to get some reinforcement on a topic that's already been covered, because we have data that supports the fact that they didn't get everything we taught already. We mock map tests in March, which gave us excellent data. So we could see as a district, there was some data where it was a school deficit, where the school might not have done well, but other schools did. But then we had objectives where the whole district didn't do well. And so we go back and figure out what in our resources did not allow kids to do well or to master particular standards. And if we feel like those standards are important for kids to embrace future learning, then we need to go ahead and make the adjustments and go ahead and reteach those things and provide kids with some videos and some teacher videos, as well as some videos that we vetted from other sites, and then also give them more practice in those areas so that they can be strengthened. And we do have a foundation to build when we come back together.
Dr. Bedell, I want to make sure if there's other questions from other board members on the academic portion.
Patty, I have a question.
Sounds like I've got Nate and Jennifer and possibly Manny. Go ahead. Jen, do you want to go?
Yeah, I think this has been excellent for me because, as you know, I have 2, one in middle and one in high, and I know Dr. Jones has one in elementary, so I think we're going to give you real-time feedback. I did get the packet. I thought it was excellently organized. It really helped me, Dr. Shepard, to hear your explanation of the rationale of what I was seeing, because as I went through it with my student, she said, I've seen all that. We've practiced this, Mom. And so I think what will be helpful for parents in allaying some of their concerns and anxieties is if it sounds like you're going to ramp this up, but that some simple communication around why you did what you did the first packet and where we're going. Remember, we don't have to know everything all at once. It doesn't have to be figured out, but keep us with you at all points in time. And I think that we will be doing what you want us to do to support what you're sending to us as parents and what teachers are trying to get students to do. But this, Dr. Shepard, commend you and your team. And just like I said to Linda, we don't expect you to get this perfect out of the gate. We are going to, as Dr. Bedell said, we're going to have to learn every single week that we do this. But I think you're doing, at this point, a very good job. But I would really ask that you keep parents in the loop so that we don't lose the parents as we're going through this.
Great point. Great point.
And then Mr. Hogan, I think you had a question.
Yeah, not so much a question, maybe just a couple of points. So I'm really excited to hear sort of the conversation specific to recognizing that we're in a unique moment of time, and there's a tremendous opportunity out there for the district to really go through a transformation of how we think about our kids' educational experience. In my former life at Cerner, what we did was something very similar in terms of when the meaningful use legislation came through that President Obama signed, which essentially mandated that health systems go move to fully electronic medical records. It was very much a transformation. And what you would find a lot of times is you would have your CIO running, the technology side of the business, and then you would have your chief medical officer or your chief nursing officer on the clinical side of the house, all saying that, yep, we agree, we need to go do this, it's important for patient safety, et cetera. But then when the cameras and lights were off, what you would find is you would find sort of a traditional butting of heads of leaders within an organization. And my hope and my encouragement to this team is that we recognize not just the opportunity, but the amount of transformation and what that means in terms of organizational change management in the organization to get leaders across the system on the same page in terms of recognition of the value that they and their disciplines add to the conversation. Right. So technology, all the work that Joe and team have been doing up until this point has been the plumbing, right? The infrastructure getting in place so that we're ready for a moment like this to happen. But the plumbing is one thing. The technology that we're going to bring to bear now is, in a lot of ways, way more strategic. And we have to recognize that technology has the same strategic purpose and value to the organization, our kids, and our community, as does the academic side. Right? Because we have to move from simply implementing this stuff and getting people to use it to them actually adopting it, right? It being a core belief in how they're going to do their work and the value that it adds. And so, again, my challenge to this team is to make sure that we understand the strategic value that the academic and the technology sides both add to the conversation, and work in a way that value gets sort of yields the impact and benefit that we know that it can.
And I know a lot of this is happening on the fly, Mr. Hogan, but even as I'm sitting here listening to you and then hearing Dr. Shepard's report, I have to also think about there's probably 6 to 8 different levels of conversions that we also have to articulate and take into account. And one of the things Ms. Wolfsey said is don't lose the parents in this process. So one of those conversions has to be communication, and how do we make sure that we bring everybody along with what we're doing. Dr. Shepard already talked about several of those conversions. The instructional conversion that needs to take place from a pedagogical standpoint, from a PD standpoint, right? And then making sure that we also have the ability to provide, from a technology standpoint, the resources, the devices, whether it's the hotspots, making that true assessment. And so there's a number of conversions that will have to go with this transformation, that while we're kind of in the air building it out, already I pieced together 6 to 8 different conversions that we're going to have to take into account that we're able to articulate through. There's a policy conversion, because one of the things Dr. Shepard talked about earlier was the digital citizenship form. So how do we make sure that from a policy standpoint, there's that conversion? So there's a lot of different pieces that we have to take into account as we're building this out, and we'll be able to do it. We have the personnel and the thinking, at the rate that we're doing it. But I do totally agree with this process, and those are just things that just came up in my head as we're thinking, and how fast it can morph just by us having this conversation.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you. Mr. Marca, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I think mine is more praise to the team again. Joe, incredible. Dr. Shepard, incredible that we're making this level of transition. And kudos to you all for thinking with the foresight of the future as part of this conversation in the midst of a crisis, right? So I think that we have great opportunity here to not only, as Joe said, do as well as our peers, but do better. So I look forward to them looking to us as the best in technological educational platforms.
Thank you. Ms. Cortez?
2 items, Dr. Bedell. Thank you, first of all. I know I'd sent some kind of fanciful thinking your way, and I really feel like that we're all very encouraged by the path and the forward-looking work that you all are doing. and that, kind of how the teams are coming together around it. One small thing to throw into your consideration set that I haven't heard tonight and that I've heard on a number of calls around the transition to digital education in a number of other communities, and that is to consider building in a component for student feedback, particularly with your middle and high school kids.
Yes.
Different teachers navigate the transition differently, and sometimes having that additional feedback loop can help principals and instructional coaches help instructional transition in that area. And the kids are pretty straightforward about whether the teaching and learning is effective.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are. Yes, and one of the things that we made sure that we implemented, because we knew that there would be some challenges at the ground level, and so they have multiple layers of support before they call digital learning teams. So what we've done is the bigger schools have two what we call technology champions in the school. And so if I am uncomfortable, I don't have to go to my principal. I don't have to let a lot of people know. I know who my digital champion is in the school, or if I'm in a larger school, I know who my two digital champions are. And so then if I can't get either one of them, then I can go to one of the coordinators, then I can go to the digital learning team. So we have layers of support for them right now. And I anticipate that as the school year continues, as we continue this whole process, that'll be something we have to continue investing in. I'm going to be able to fund it, but I think I'm going to have to really look at making sure that I have that in my budget, because if we're really going to go full force, we've got to make sure that we have people on the ground levels to help teachers right there at their buildings.
Awesome, thank you.
Hey, Ms. Manser, I don't know if there's any more board questions, but I did have a remark I wanted to make before we move over to Ms. Rachel.
Okay, then I think that I don't see other questions from the board at this time. I just thank you. This has been extraordinary, and I know that we were just on spring break last week, so the way in which you're rolling this out, and it's incremental but fast, and I think we appreciate that, and hopefully the community is watching this, or if they get tired of Netflix, they'll watch it later, and they'll have a better understanding of how we are rolling out a comprehensive approach. So thank you, Dr. Bedell.
Yeah, I just wanted to read this, and once again, before we move over to Ms. Rachel, there's a young lady that yesterday when we were at Central, her name is Philomena Lawson. And Philomena is a math interventionist over at Martin Luther King. And as parents were coming in, some of the parents were coming in saying, hey, I didn't receive my packet. She had actually come because she wanted to print out the packets for her kids. And we had all agreed, let's just print out the first 2 to 3 days, because we know hopefully by Thursday, the majority of our families will have received their packages. But we also realized that there were a couple of other parents that came in. She had 2 kids with her, and she went into Mr. Madry's office and went to work, and nobody asked her to do that. Started printing copies for each of those parents that wanted copies of those packets. And it's, like I said, it's those kind of things where people go above and beyond. I had asked her to send us her name because I wanted to publicly acknowledge her, but I also want to acknowledge Dr. Shepard's team, the curriculum team. This email came from a school district. I'm not going to name the school district, but it's a school district on the Kansas side. And it basically reads, my early childhood director shared with me your learning packet. It is amazing. I noticed you use conscious discipline as well as creative curriculum books. Would you mind if we used it or parts of it as we make this difficult transition also? And of course, Dr. Shepard replied and said, yes, we don't have an editable version. However, you can make copies and utilize whatever we have. And that's a testament. Like, the biggest compliment you can get in education is when another educational institution sees your work and says, hey, can we borrow that? Can we utilize it? That's the biggest compliment. So I wanted to make sure that I acknowledged her team for putting this together in this short period of time, but even the quality that other educators are seeing out of these work products.
And one thing before we move on, I really would, I want to totally give kudos to my team. I mean, they are amazing, simply amazing. I mean, we have done all of this in a matter of 1 week, it feels like, and a little over a week. And I mean, Joe's team has been incredible in this process. We've met, and they've been made themselves available whenever we needed to meet. The curriculum team has been amazing. The digital learning team has been amazing. So I'm really proud of the quality of people that we have on our team. And I just wanted to make that a public statement.
Awesome.
Dr. Bedell, do you want to have Kelly Rachel?
Yes, we're ready, Kelly.
All right, so this is going to flow nicely through the course of this conversation because in talking about communication, really thinking about what bite-sized chunks look like for our parents and for our staff. So to Ms. Wolfsey's point, to Dr. Shepard's point, on Sunday we released all of our information about schools being closed through the 24th, about the learning packets coming home, about our food distribution sites. And so as we move to the end of this week, we'll be transitioning to start talking about device deployment, blended learning, what those things look like as we forecast for our families for that April 6th, 7th, and 8th date. And also I like the point of reiterating that these packets were for practice. We can reiterate that in our communication as we forecast for the blended learning and the device deployment coming up in a week and a half. So again, bite-sized chunks, next tier of communication coming out regarding what that looks like for April 6th, 7th, and 8th. One of the things that we've been thinking about too, obviously, is our website and how we've been keeping that up to date for our families and for our staff and for our public. You'll note that we kind of redesigned it over the weekend and throughout Monday to make it more user-friendly for all of our folks to go to certain sections, whether it's food distribution, learning packets, COVID information, just really chunked that out so that it was more user-friendly for our families. We also are keeping it updated every day and really pointing folks to that when they have questions about food distribution or those learning packets. We, in kind of conjunction with that, our social media has been really tied to sharing the good news and sharing the kudos about how our families have reacted to receiving those food packets and those learning packets. So if you haven't seen that, we're sharing some really good content on those sites. As of yesterday, we've had 47 TV segments throughout the Kansas City media landscape, and those are just TV spots. Those don't include the print spots via the Kansas City Star that Mr. Hogan alluded to earlier. So, and that didn't include our segments that happened today. So 47 segments in the course of a week is really good, and all of those have been positive as it relates to what we're doing for kids and servicing them through food and through learning. And the main message there has been academically, socially, and emotionally, and how we're serving our families. One of the things to note about the learning packets too, as we think about marketing and branding and the KCPS image, as we sent those learning packets out, you'll note that they had a front cover on them that was branded to KCPS standards, meaning as districts like Dr. Bedell mentioned in Kansas or others reach out to us and want to borrow those, they're branded with the KCPS logo and messaging, so they know they came from KCPS. The family engagement side as well, Dr. Shepard alluded to this, talking about our teachers and their contact with our kids. We're supporting what it means for our teachers to have contact with each of their students. And like she noted, by Friday, each teacher will have reached out to each one of their students. And that's been really important for the relationship and the connection piece of how we're making sure that we're involved in our students and their learning as we enter this time of blended learning in our new normal. One of the things that you guys mentioned and that I've been discussing with my fellow school communications professionals is how are we taking our temperature, how are we kind of getting those temperature checks from our families to know that they're absorbing information and they're getting our information. So whether we think about a survey or we check in with some key stakeholders like you, Ms. Wolfsey, as a parent, you, Dr. Jones, as a parent, your feedback's really good tonight because it helps us really get that temperature check on how our materials are landing on our parents. So thank you for that. And we'll be thinking as we go through the next week how we gather more of that feedback whether it's on a broad scale through a survey, which I don't want to bombard people with surveys right now because we have lots of information coming in. Survey fatigue indeed. But just keep those feedback items coming and we'll absorb those and monitor and pivot as we need to. One more thing, actually two more things. One of the items that we want to make sure that we're stressing coming up with our families and with our students in the next couple of weeks is our commitment to celebrating graduation and prom for our seniors. We've been discussing as a team, as cabinet and communications, how do we celebrate our seniors in the event that school is closed through the remainder of the year? And is that pushing graduation events into June or July, possibly? Is that having kind of a district-wide prom for all of our seniors? Just know that we're thinking about that, and we'll be committing to our families that we are thinking about that and planning for that towards the end of the year. Last item is, you know that we're sharing communication drafts with you, communication planning drafts with you. Those will keep coming as we monitor and as we adjust to what's coming up and what we're forecasting. And then one of the things that Dr. Bedell mentioned too is the Council of Great City Schools, but please know that we've also been really intimately involved with the cooperating school districts of Greater Kansas City, and we're sharing all of our communication planning, all of our forecast information with them so that we can be pretty close with other school districts as we go through this crisis.
Thank you, Kelly. Are there questions from board members regarding Kelly's report?
Again, this is Nate. Oh, yep, there you go. Manny said it. I was just going to say it. Yep.
Say what?
Go ahead, Nate?
Just great. Manny said it as well. Just kudos to the communications team. I mean, pretty much every question that I've had so far, for the most part, has been out there, right? I go to the website or I go to the Ed Foundation website, and I'm able to get what I need by going there. Now, I'm not, I don't have a parent that's a school-aged kid anymore, but so that's a different set of questions, as Jennifer and Dr. Jones have talked through. But just for my purposes, as a community member and as a board member wanting to understand what's going on in the district, what our next steps are, et cetera, I've been able to find what I need out there for the most part. So thank you for that. And it's been frequent and I think well organized in a way that's pretty easy for people to sort of, consume and share as needed.
Mr. Martin or Dr. Jones, I'm trying to figure out the order of people here.
I'm sorry if there's a process I'm not observing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that when we talk about communications, a lot of what you all are doing is good public practice anyway, and good public health. For instance, the still paying of employees that you all talked about, not just education staff, but also what you guys are doing with the taxis and the bus drivers. That's amazing as well. And what my communications person in my workplace said the other day was, I hear a lot about the food, but I don't care about all the other great things that the district is doing to support people in the community during this effort. And what you all are doing is really good community work. So I would just keep that in mind as you're communicating, tweeting, or what have you, that, there are so many facets of what you all are doing to help the community through this process. Like every person you're touching through your food service, whether you're checking in on people, all of that is a part of helping. I mean, it's public health if I'm being like a, generous with the use of that term. So just thinking about that in your communications.
Thank you. Did Mr. Wasserstrom, were you trying to?
Yes. Yep.
Go ahead.
With what?
Did you have a comment, or I couldn't tell if you were signaling me?
Oh, no. The one thing that I wanted to add a little bit earlier is that based on what I've looked up, the state has about 300 courses offered through MOCAP. We have something around 70, I believe, in the virtual school program. At the beginning of the year, we only had 114 students or thereabouts as of the first week of the school year signed up for online learning. I've been excited at the prospect of this coronavirus epidemic being an encouragement for us to push out and market the richness of courses that are available. Just on every academic subject imaginable, there's coursework available. The other thing that I have not been able to flesh out is whether we make money or it costs us money, even though we have to pay a varying amount per student, per semester, per course for virtual school courses. We do get reimbursed based on the assumption that we have 100% attendance provided the student finishes the course. That would be an amazing assistance in our struggle to pick up our attendance. If we had a bunch of students taking virtual courses and we're getting 100% attendance credit, that has to help. In terms of the financial impact, I have no idea how it translates in terms of the reimbursement from the state for average daily attendance versus the royalty fee that we have to pay per student. But, look, I understand that the district is being bombarded from every district, and we have our hands full. I think Dr. Bedell and the team are doing a magnificent job. And, I'm not pushing and saying, oh, by the way, drop some stuff and worry about virtual education, online learning. It's inappropriate to go to secondary issues when we have such basic problems to work on. And I think that Dr. Bedell has everything organized very, very well. So, I'm just kind of saying, in addition, when you wake up at 2 a.m. because you can't sleep, Dr. Bedell, give a little thought to pushing out these courses.
Yes, sir, and we have, that's a part of what we do at Launch, and we're part of the Springfield program that they have, and I'll be very clear with you, the superintendents in this area, we are all talking about a potential platform that would work for our region to be customized for the kids that we serve in this region. And so that is in the conversation, and that was a part of a conversation we had a week ago. But right now, Launch is what we utilize, and we do have a number of students that's taking advantage of that, whether it's through credit recovery or even some original credit courses too.
Patty, I have a question.
Yes.
Kelly, I just wanted to clarify something that I understood. So are we sending out, I guess, let me ask you this. How often are we communicating with parents, and in what way is the main way? Is it email, text, both?
Oh.
Yeah, it's all. So on Sunday, when we sent out our information about school being closed through the 24th, as well as our learning packets and food distribution, it went out via email, text, and phone call, and then it got pushed out on social as well. Are you receiving those, Ms. Wolfsey?
Well, I am. I think what's happening is because of the inundation into my email, I've stopped I look at the most important stuff and I look at the text first. And so I think I'm probably doing what many parents are, which is going to the text. So my clarification question is, as I had mentioned, how excited I was to hear Dr. Shepard's explanation, and even a little bit of Dr. Bedell's, we're figuring this as we go, work with us kind of comment. We're not waiting until later to let parents know what we just heard. Will a communication go out to parents, because we're all I've been trying to find out when parents are getting packets, and hearing from them, packets are still arriving, here's what's in the packet. And the reason I asked this, I realized one thing I didn't let you know. While I loved my packet, it did not have any branding on it. It did not have a letter. And so I just naturally know how to organize that. But I think parents, when they get it, might be a little bit like, okay, what do I do with this?
Okay.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, so our online packets have that branding on them. So very good point, Ms. Wolfsey. As we think about what that next communication looks like, if it's tomorrow, Thursday.
We'll get one out tomorrow. Because we have a lot of information we can share, even after the discussion tonight and getting some feedback from you all that we can put out tomorrow.
Thank you. I'm just checking to see if there's any final additional comments on this component of our meeting this evening. All right.
Just one closing piece, Ms. Manser. And this is, you know, for Kelly and her team. This is from one of our building principals, basically saying thank you. I know how hard the team is working on making sure communication is timely and accurate. I also want to say thank you for allowing principals to have a heads up on communication pieces coming. In the 8 years I have worked in the district, this has never happened. So it's kind of a shot at me. In here for. I really appreciate the extra step to make sure that admins are informed. And so, you know, this is coming from an experienced principal. So like I said, Kelly, what we're doing right now, we just need to continue to do it and make sure that we stay on top of it, we stay timely. And it is definitely showing. And I know that there was another one that I got from Dr. Kirksey, who's been in the district 50-something years, that also was very similar to, you know, just saying thank you for being timely and keeping us ahead of the curve before, you know, we find out from the media or somebody else.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. You know, there's not anything I can add to what my colleagues have already said. I hope that you and everyone on your team hears that we are awed and appreciative of the incredible work that you are doing. At this point in time, we will move into regular business items, and we have 3 business items that we will take one at a time that the administration wants to bring forward. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I've stated earlier, because of the scenarios that we're facing right now, this is kind of forcing us to have to make some more urgent decisions and to get ahead of the curve. And if we are to truly embrace the direction that we've been building over the last couple of years, now is the time to do it. And so we know that we have a digital divide that exists in this city. We felt very confident in our partnership with Sprint 100 that the 1 million Sprint 1 million plan, where we were able to get hotspots for our kids in grades 9 through 12. We also know that decision was made that we would allow for our high schoolers to take their laptops home so that they would be able to conduct their work, virtually. But we realized that we did not necessarily have a plan for our students that are K through 8, that in terms of them being able to have that access to hotspots and making sure that they have access to devices that they could also take home. And so what we are coming to our board for is 3 items that will help address the hotspot situation, but also help address some of the additional devices that we need through T-Mobile, Apple Inc., and the 1 Million Project. And I want to pass it over to Joe and Linda at this time that will be able to answer any financial implication questions, but also giving the board and the community the why behind the request that we're asking you all to take action on.
Joe, I'll let you go first.
Okay. So the T-Mobile hotspots, the first item there for $486,000. What is happening in the environment right now trying to get hotspots? Sprint doesn't have any more hotspots in their fleet, and that's the truth for many of the regional carriers and even national carriers out there. So T-Mobile has some, and what we want to do with our hotspots is have a phased approach. We want to take care of the urgent need that we have right now due to COVID-19, but we also want to phase in some more purchases so that we can be prepped and ready for next school year. So the T-Mobile item is for a quantity of 3,000 hotspots. We believe that will take care of our urgent need. I'm working with them on inventory right now. The board item says that it's projected arrival of April 30th, but it looks like we are going to be able to bump that up to March 30th to get those 3,000 hotspots in so that we can actually pass those out with the devices by April 6th. That's what we're shooting for there. The next item is for Apple Inc., $386,950, and that is to buy 1,000 more iPads to get into our fleet as we start to send devices home. Now and in the future, we want to make sure that we have ample loaner pool, as we call it, or surplus supply, to make sure that we're beefing up inventory as we need to. And when we do these purchases, we try to project out 3 years and what the need's going to be throughout the whole 3 years. So we believe we're going to need another 1,000 iPads there. And then the 1 million project, they've done something pretty amazing, which, as Dr. Bedell said earlier, they were helping us take care of our grades 9 through 12 by providing us free hotspots and free service. They've extended their program to kindergarten through 12 now. And what we need to do, and why there's a $375,000 cost to that, is they're needing us to purchase the devices at cost, and then they will give us 2 years of free service with those devices. So total, after all of these hotspot purchases, we'll have about 10,000 hotspots for our future needs as well as our emerging needs right now.
And just excuse me,
Go ahead.
to chime in on how we're funding those 2 contracts for hotspots, it's our intent to use title dollars that would probably not end up being used this year because of the fact that we're going to have these number of weeks out of school. And then we're looking at how we figure out a way within other parts of the operating budget to cover those iPads, or perhaps use title dollars for those as well. We are tracking all of these. We've created this Google spreadsheet where everybody who's ordering for COVID is going in so that we can track, because we do expect there could end up being some federal, FEMA, or other kinds of dollars that we could possibly be reimbursed for these items on. So we are keeping track.
Thank you. We will be tackling each one of these as independent items, and that will allow for questions if there are any questions. So the first item is regarding the T-Mobile item for $486,000 to approve expenditure with T-Mobile for education for the purchase of 3,000 student Wi-Fi hotspots with 1 year of service to be charged to the available Title I funds. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
Is there all right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on this motion?
Patty, can I ask one question about the T-Mobile contract?
Yes.
Ms. Quinley or Mr. Phillips, either one, so we're covering year 1 of the contract. If we have issues or we don't extend for some reason, or we transition to a different carrier, do we have contractual obligations to pay beyond year 1?
We do not. It is a 1-year contract, and then the devices are actually ours to keep. One of the things that we are looking at, and there's no guarantee, but with T-Mobile and Sprint merging, and Sprint being the creator of the 1 million project, is they're looking at creating a project called the 10 million project, and we might actually be able to, after year 1, continue with those same hardware devices, those hotspots, but with free service after that. So that's why we wanted to do a 1-year contract right now.
Great, thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. Any additional?
One, just an inquiry in general. When it comes to the hotspot things, what, if any, discussion or research has been had with like the Spectrum opening up to this free internet subscription? Have we pursued that at all, and kind of what is the benefit of this versus that?
Sure. Spectrum opening up is a great thing. There's 2 challenges that we have with Spectrum. One is our mobility rate. So Spectrum is residential internet. So it goes into where people live, and then as people move, they either have to sign up again or try to transfer that service. They also have it's included this Wi-Fi hotspot mesh network that Spectrum has and that they provide. One of the challenges that we have is when you look at that next to the FCC map of our digital deserts, they don't go together. So we'll still need to provide that type of service for where the majority of our parents and students who live in those areas, the majority of them live there and they still need that service. So Spectrum wouldn't really work best for our model.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, it has been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote. The secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Wolsey.
Yes.
Thank you. There is a majority in favor, and the purchase of the Wi-Fi hotspots is approved. The next item for action is $386,950 to approve for the expenditure with Apple Inc. for 1,000 iPads. And that we have had the update on that, but before I accept a motion, are there any additional questions regarding the Apple Inc. proposal? Hearing no questions, I would accept a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it has been moved and seconded to approve the purchase of 1,000 iPads from Apple Inc. Is there any debate on this motion? Hearing none, this will be a roll call vote. The secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes. I'm trying to push the button, yeah.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Wolsey.
Yes.
Thank you. There is a majority in favor, and the Apple Inc. expenditure is approved. The third item on our list is the 1 million project for $375,000 for the purchase of 2,000 student hotspots with 2 free years of service, 2,000 hotspot-only phones with 2 years of free service, and 5,000 Wi-Fi hotspots with 2 years of service to be charged to Title I funds. Are there any final questions on this item? Okay, hearing none, it would be in order to receive a motion to approve the expenditure.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote. The secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Wolsey.
Yes.
Thank you. There is a majority in favor, and the purchase for 1 million project of hotspot is approved. At this point on the agenda, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have items 1 through 20.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
before you go there, let me just say this. Once again, I can't express my sincere gratitude and just the level of concern and care that you all, continuously show. In the 4 years that I've been here, it hasn't been a single time when we've come and asked you all for a major investment on behalf of the students that we serve that we've gotten to know. And I guess for me, just telling you all, we will continue to do the right thing by these children that we serve, by this community. We will make sure that this investment yields results that will continue to propel this district forward. And we will make sure that we highlight this in our communication out to our families around the extensive amount of support that we continue to get from this board, especially in difficult times like this. You all continue to come through, and I just want you to know from the bottom of my heart, this means a lot, because this is, something we've been afraid to do, but needed to do, and I'm thankful that we got some courageous people on this board that can see forward in what this could potentially do for our system. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bell. Yeah, I saw Nate clapping. I'll clap here. In my own room. Thank you very much. We do have, it has been moved and seconded to approve the items on the consent.
There's no motion for the consent.
Oh, sorry. It is in order to receive a motion for approval of the consent agenda. Or for the consent items. Sorry. So moved. Who said that?
Rita.
Rita, in a second?
Second.
All right, now it has been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote. The secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Mansard?
Yes.
Mr. Abarca?
Yes.
Ms. Bartos?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfson?
Yes.
Thank you. There is a majority and the items on the consent agenda are approved. This brings us to the conclusion of our agenda for this evening. Before I adjourn, I just want to thank my colleagues and the administration in us all coming together in this fashion. It's not as cozy as we normally experience, but it's been fun for me to look at all of you on a big screen. And the board of directors will convene again for our next currently posted meeting on April 8th and April 22nd. And those meetings will also be held via video conferencing. So with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Bye, guys.
Board?
I have a question and a request. Shannon, just to make sure I understood, so if a parent calls in and says, hey, I've got to have someone who's not on my contact list pick up my child, how do we, if that is the case, how do we validate that that parent is who they're saying they are?
So they have a couple, if they don't, a lot of times at our school sites, they'll know the parents well, they'll know their phone numbers, and they might recognize the person. In a situation where you wouldn't recognize it, because we did discuss that at our meeting, you could have, the problem is you could have somebody send an email, but somebody else could have their email availability as well. But what we can do is verify the phone number that they called in with, that it's one of the phone numbers on our Tyler system for that parent.
Okay, so we can't release.
And when they identify the person, then we are to put that person through hall pass, make sure that that person is a safe person. So even if the parents identified them, we have an override and say, well, you sent somebody that's on a cannot have contact with children list, we're not releasing the student. So that's why the hall pass part is in there. But then also look at that ID and make sure that that is the person that the parent sent.
That makes sense.
You have it tied down as close as you can to make sure that you've talked to a parent, you're not talking to a student or an older child, that you can ask them their address, other identifying information if you have any concerns. And that is the part that, we've said you have to verify it. And I think that to be any more specific is difficult, because it's case by case, right? Because if you know a parent, you see that parent all the time, you would have one way of verifying it, and then you would need to, if you have any concerns, then you would have to take an additional step. One thing that we did put into the procedure as well is that for any reason, if a school employee has a concern with releasing a student, they can refuse.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And then one request for, I guess, the broader team is, because we are going to have such a long stretch of time between this procedure sort of being finalized and school starting back up again, if we can just push out communication as a reminder to the school leadership and others to make sure that it's current again once they get back in the swing of things.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Patty,
Other questions?
I've got one. I guess this is probably to Dr. Bedell and administrative team. Did we figure out a mechanism to make sure in future situations like this, where we have incidents, that we created triggers that'll create new policy to respond to this situation? I know we had talked about that, I think, in exec one time about why it took so long to get to this point for a policy to be created when the incident happened so long ago. Do we have any mechanism there on that back end to make sure that in future, hopefully nothing happens like this, but if other situations...
I will sit here and tell you I can't give you an answer on that. I know I can tell you right now, I don't think that we've gotten that far in our thinking, like what would trigger. We did talk about it, and I remember that we just have not gotten that far in our discussion around what's a system that would automatically require that we need to move into our policy. So, unless I'm missing that, other cabinet members, I just don't think that we've gotten that far in our discussion.
I know we've talked about a policy review, and we've talked about running all of our policies through the equity lens, which is, to me, is essentially what this would be. But we just have not talked about when we actually plan on starting that process. And we would probably want to start with all of the policies and procedures that relate to students first, and then funnel everything else from there. I imagine that we could begin looking at that sometime as we approach the fall semester, just looking at the student policies. That is part of our equity office. That is part of what they want to do. They want to begin pulling policies and looking at them and seeing if the policies are right for everybody, if the procedures are right for everybody, or only right for some. And then making the necessary changes. But it's not a quick process, because even with this one, it took months, because we had to get the right people sitting in the right seats, so that we can make sure that the right conversations were happening. We had to get parents, we had to get principals, and Shauna, had to bring all these people together, and they had to vet this over several times, and then they had to vet it with several different groups of people before it actually became finalized. So when we do, I would say as we approach next year, we probably want to look at how many of these do we want to look at, and then what kind of timeline are we looking at as we look at all of them, because at some point we do want to look at all of them. So how does that look, and what does that timeline look like?
Yeah, and I will say, Manny, because there may be some things that are brand new that's not even in policy that pops up. And I think that, even if it's to the point where we have to craft new policy, I would say to Bill and Shauna, since you're both on the line, I would, let's get together and think about what that could look like. What could be a potential two-step process that automatically says, hey, we need to get on this. This is something we need to address. Because you're right, something may pop up that we never even experienced. And even as we think about this new era that we're going into, what we're doing now, right? There's going to be things that are going to open up that we don't have no policy for. So how do we start to already forward think in that manner? And so I will definitely want to work with our legal team on some thoughts on that.
Thank you.
Dr. Bedell, does anyone else have a question? I think it's not a question, it's a follow-up to what Manny was talking about. It seems to me, and I'll look forward to hearing back after you've conferred with your group, but it seems to me that there are some actions, like when it becomes illegal, when there is a health and safety issue, that becomes slightly different than the equity discussion, like when this was an occurrence of an action resulted in an issue related to health and safety, and my assumption is those are the things that are most likely to come first to you and the legal department, and so that thinking about how you prioritize those things that pertain to health and safety of children, and how does that then trigger something in your system that will cause re-examination of policy.
Yeah. So I will definitely have some conversation about this, and Bill and Shauna, let's work to try to, get something on the books here over the next couple of days, so we can just kind of start brainstorming on it. So next time we're presented with this question, we have a response.
Yeah, this is Bill. Will do, Dr. Bedell.
All right. Thank you.
Next item, Dr. Bedell.
Yes, moving on. So we are over to the budget workshop schedule. And I know that right now we may be in this feeling of, hey, are we behind schedule given, where we are with being out of school. And I want, Linda had actually submitted a budget timeline, I don't know, a while ago to the board, but I know with everything going on, it's hard to keep up with the timeline. So Linda actually submitted another timeline to you all. And Linda, if you want to provide just a quick update as to where we are and to provide assurances that by the time we get to that budget workshop that's scheduled for April 29th, that we should be in pretty good shape and should be on target to hit our target goal of June 24th.
Yeah, I definitely will. So I did just email you the budget timeline for this year. It's the same with maybe a typo correction as what was printed and at your workstations last month when we met. When you look down through it, we're set for a public hearing on April 22nd and then a board workshop on April 29th with the board. And what that does is it lets us put sort of the administrative thinking out to the public, let you hear feedback on that from them, and then on the 29th when we workshop it, that gives you the chance to direct us to make any kinds of changes or pivots you want so that we can bring you a final document on May 27th. Dr. Bedell's right, we're on target. We are, it would be a little more comfortable if last week and this week hadn't been all about the coronavirus and had in fact been able to be budget week, because spring break is great budget work time for us. But working still with our business and finance and budget team who are at home. Right now we're updating revenue projections based on what we're hearing and seeing out there, not only for concerns about the national economy and how we recover from this issue, but what's actually happening at the state level and the other levels that will have an impact. So, and then by the end of this month, the first week of April, probably it'll more likely be, the superintendent cabinet will look at all of the requests compared to that amount of allowable new or less revenue that we have to deal with, and we'll make final recommendations. But people have submitted their budgets, they understood the rules, and we don't have a lot of requests for new things because the last couple of years you guys have been great to us and given us a lot of what we needed, particularly in the instructional and student support and IT areas. That's where we've really been focusing our increased spending. So I feel like we're on target.
Yes.
What questions do people have?
Patty, this is Rita. Linda, just one question. Can you refresh my recollection on when the assessor's office has to certify a preliminary projection of valuations?
So I think that came in today, actually. Let me check that. I do think we received it today. I just haven't had a lot of time for email. But I will check and find it and let you know.
Okay, but you anticipate having that, or you have it, or you will have it?
Yeah, we're supposed
to the budget hearing.
Yeah, we're supposed to have it. We're supposed to file our preliminary rate by April 1st, which means they have to give us the preliminary AV prior to that. So I think we have the preliminary AV now so that we can do it. Of course, our rate doesn't change, but.
Right. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I'll let you know for sure when I find it.
Other questions on the budget schedule? I have a question, but I'll wait. Somebody may have a question. I'll go ahead and jump in, and then if anyone has a question, they can come after me. The budget workshop on April 29th, this is where the public has the opportunity to weigh in with questions and comments, things that they want to see or understand, correct, Linda?
You're on
Linda, I
mute.
think you're muted. Unmute you.
Sorry about that. We're set to have the public hearing on the 22nd, and then you workshop on the 29th, so that you can consider what the public had to say to you on the 22nd.
Okay, so we know that on April 22nd, that we are actually we are still working remotely. And so I think it'll be important, and maybe Linda, you and Manny can work together to talk about the best way to make that budget hearing on April 22nd meaningful. And that'll probably require some push-out communications and some support from the communications team. Otherwise, I'm concerned that it won't be meaningful. This is a new way of doing business, what we're doing tonight. And so it's not as easy for the public who can't just randomly feel comfortable showing up. And so any kind of, I think, pre-work that we can do for April 22nd.
That's a great point. That hadn't even hit my awareness that was still during the shutdown time. So if it makes more sense, we could, on the 29th, we chose the 22nd because that's a regular meeting. So you can have a brief budget hearing and then go into a regular meeting. We could do the budget hearing on the 29th, the same time that we workshop. They'd be two separate sessions, but they could be the same evening if you wanted to look at it that way. But there's no guarantee that we won't be out of shelter in place by the 29th either.
I think it would just be helpful, Dr. Bedell, like if you all, and with Mr. Barca involved in the conversation, let's figure out how to make that meaningful. I think even when we were operating in normal times, we wanted to make it more meaningful and engaging. And now we have sort of an extra hurdle, which could be fun to tackle. So if we could think about how we do that, because I think we'll probably, regardless whether it's the 22nd or the 29th, I think we know the 22nd we're not physically here in the Board of Education, so we might even assume that for the 29th and just do some pre-planning.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It is an additional hurdle, and I don't, I've worked in, this is the fourth system that I've worked in. Really, let's count three that I'm really aware of how the budget process goes, and just trying to figure out how to get people to come out and have some interest. I think it's just for a lot of these people, a very boring topic. And every year that we've done this, whether it was in Baltimore County or HISD, people who you might have 2 or 3 that show up. So I would definitely want to see if there's a way now, if we have to do it through this venue where people don't have to actually leave their goal to a physical spot and they can log in. And maybe we will have an opportunity to increase some and get some more input from people if they're able to do it in this type of venue. So it's a possible opportunity here.
What I would say is there are definitely teletown hall options that could exist for this type of mechanism. It doesn't necessarily include video that I've seen, but there are dial-in systems that I know we use at work that could be very good for this. I will remind you all that the city budget process is a very engaged effort from the city as well as constituents, and I don't know that we want to go that far, but budgeting can be something that the public is very interested in if they have the belief that they have access to change things. So I'm happy to try and be creative here, so I look forward to that conversation.
All right.
And then I will also support, between Joe Phillips and I, looking at that partnership with Mr. Abarca and Ms. Quinley, how we can help on the communication side to make sure that we're facilitating. If it's a town hall, if it's a, send in your questions ahead of time, we'll help facilitate that.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Dr. Bedell, did you have anything else under superintendent open items?
No, Madam Chair, that concludes the superintendent open items.
Okay, so we will go to the board chair open items, and we have the first item on the agenda is just governance and COVID-19 planning. And I would like to kind of set the stage for the conversation and sort of maybe add a different frame to it. I know I sent out a lot of resources from MSBA. I think there's some, there have been some like offline conversations I've been able to have with many of the board members, and have had a couple of emails from folks. And I had shared a variety of things, including language that was developed by MSBA that could help board members if they wanted to think about more public statements or public resolutions as to how they want to propose to how they are positioning themselves to respond during this pandemic. It's an unusual situation. I think the feedback that I've gotten is really has been effective, and I believe that probably the kind of collective, my interpretation is, we're not, as most board members are not interested in adopting a resolution. It may have created some confusion when I shared the information, and so we're not really in a position where we want to adopt a resolution, but we should take several minutes and use this time period to talk about how we want to organize ourselves going forward so that we are both flexible and that we are responsive to Dr. Bedell's need for timely decision making. And many of the suggestions that I have heard have been more particularly around something we have already adopted previously, which was scheduling multiple meetings out. Given that, and I've talked to Dr. Bedell about this, given that our normal business meeting, which is when we take action on contracts and very specific board items, won't occur until the end of April, and we know that we are closed until April 24th, it seems reasonable and logical, is what I'm hearing from all board members, that what we might want to do is identify 3 possible dates by which we would set as update points, and that way we have those already posted and we have those on the calendar. We can always add additional as needed. It doesn't preclude us, but we may go ahead similar to how we did a week ago. So that is one of the suggestions that I've heard from quite a few people, and I think, Dr. Bedell, you were even comfortable with that concept.
Yes, that's fine.
So I want to just open this now for anybody who wants to kind of dive in and talk about how we want to do this going forward so that we can all, maintain our governance and we all have that opportunity to receive updates and give timely action to the superintendent. Don't all rush in at once.
I mean, I'm totally fine with the preset board meeting dates. I think that makes sense. It allows us to have something on the calendar in case there's something that's coming up in the next day or two that Dr. Bedell's going to need support from the board on. And then, as you mentioned, Patty, we always have the opportunity to sort of do an ad hoc board meeting as well. I don't think very many of us are going to be hopping on planes anytime soon. As sad as that probably makes a lot of us. So we'll have the ability to sort of react to Dr. Bedell. Obviously, from my perspective, I think we've allowed Dr. Bedell to sort of run the show here as we should. Right? He's the CEO of the school district, and Dr. Bedell, hopefully you felt the ability and the support from the board for you to just go do what you need to do to work with your peers in cooperating school districts, to work with the local political institutions that are in place as well. It'd be nice if we had the opportunity to work with the state in a more thoughtful way as well. But you've been able to sort of go do what you need to go do to make sure that our families are getting what they need, that your staff is getting what it needs, et cetera. And so I think from my perspective at least, we'll continue to be super flexible with that and make sure that you have what you need and you have our support.
Right.
Other comments?
Great.
I just want to echo what Nate says. I mean, I think this is most certainly a unique time, and Dr. Bedell and his team's leadership is definitely appreciated, taking the charge and kind of being this example for other districts. This is just making sure that we maintain our responsibility as well. Just to give you all a quick heads up, I'm trying to get off of this computer because it's dying and get onto another one, so I might drop out shortly.
Okay, yeah, just be back on for that treasurer's report. Other comments?
Patty, I just wanted to kind of jump on board with my colleagues, but also to say I think Dr. Bedell, you've done a great job of giving us a sense when the water is beginning to boil on movement, and I would anticipate that we're going to go through a little bit of a quiet period since we have an extended date out there. But as you start to see the temperature turn up again on decision making around extended closure, just do what you have done, which is keep us in the loop, and then I think all of us are prepared to be available as needed. So yeah. I appreciate the communication and the way it's been done.
Absolutely. I think to your point, that the next big thing coming down the pipeline is probably going to be on the decisions around how do we count grades as we close out the year. And we're trying to push the state to take the lead on that, to tell us that, hey, third quarter grades, if you are already passing at the end of third quarter, which is where we were approaching, should that suffice for this semester? And then for the students that need, additional work, well, they're doing that now and they're working with their teachers. Students that may be on the brink can get the additional supports that they need to get over the hump. But other state departments of education have already sent communication down to their schools telling them how they were going to handle promotion and retention and the seniors and all of that good stuff. And we're waiting. So I know I had to hang up on the Commissioners Advisory Council meeting because it started at 3:30 and I felt like they were just getting to the things that I wanted to hear once we had to get on. But I do have the Belton Superintendent in Park Hill. They're going to provide me some updates and some of the questions that I had for the Commissioner. I just fed them through them to give to her. But I think that's going to be the next big thing that comes out. And then further communication certainly around, whether we're going to have to look at more of a longer term of school closure or not, and then what happens with summer school. So as I get the information, I will make sure that you all are well versed and up to date on it, and will have the respective talking points that you need to share with constituents.
So I had looked at some possibilities of dates, and I wanted to run through that with the board real quickly, and then other comments and suggestions. We know that we have board meetings on April 8th and April 22nd, and we know those two board meetings will be held remote. We know we also have a budget workshop on the 29th, so we can anticipate that we're going to get updates on the 8th, 22nd, and the 29th. So I think one of the questions I had is, should we, do we want to go ahead and set an update call for either April 1st or for April 2nd, and then we would just have the 8th. We would have the 8th, 22nd, and 29th, and we can add any additional as needed. But I want to get some feedback both from Dr. Bedell and from my colleagues. We know that some decision is going to be occurring because Dr. Bedell, our closure runs to the 24th. So I'm not sure whether you think you'll be looking at if there will be the possibility of the extension of that, if that would be a discussion with cooperative school districts in the second week of April, or what you're anticipating now?
Yeah, I think it's our expectation that the group will probably come back together during that week of April 6th to begin to, as we're monitoring numbers, and right now we know the numbers are steady increasing, and we keep hearing the worst is yet to come. So I would think probably our goal is that during that week of April 6th to come back together. That gives us almost 2.5 weeks, or closer to 3 weeks here before we need, 2.5 weeks if we have to make any further decisions. But that's going to probably be that timeline, that week of April 6th for certain.
Patty,
Yeah.
why would we not just go ahead and schedule the 1st and the 15th on every Wednesday? And if we don't need it, we take it off. It's the same way we do with the government relations. It's super easy. Everybody gets it on their calendar.
All right.
I like.
We can do that. And do you all, now on the board meeting nights, we know we'll have those updates. Do you want on the 1st and the 15th, do you want that as a 3 o'clock call? Is that your preference?
I like 3, but I don't know how everybody else likes it.
Yeah, I like 3 o'clock too. I'm pretty flexible on that. And honestly, well, given the way things are going right now, I'm flexible on anything. So you all tell me what you all want to do. I can make it work.
Okay. Dr. Jones, Marvia, I think you're trying to weigh in here.
Yes, that works for me. 3 is fine, but I'm pretty flexible.
Rita?
This is Rita. I would make the same note, and frankly, if we could even do that with the 8th, despite the fact that we are all locked down, the evening of April 8th is the first night of Passover, and I will have to get off the call in time to get on Zoom and have a Seder with my family. So, that probably means I'm off before sundown, which is probably 6:30, 6:45.
Hey, can I add something? Because I'm sitting here thinking, I know I normally, it's probably twice a week, I'm having a conference call with a core group of superintendents, and it normally takes place between 2:30 and 3 o'clock. So I'm wondering, I'm worried, now I'm thinking about the 3 o'clock piece, and I'm a little worried that then I may be missing out on critical information that I could be sharing with you all. So I'm wondering, could it, maybe, and here's the deal, I don't know what days, let's get this set, I can work with the superintendents, and I can see if, hey, guys, if we don't have to do it on Wednesday, or if we do it on Wednesday, could we do it at 4 o'clock rather than 3? So I'll work with them around what the consensus of this group says works for you all.
And Dr. Patel, I suppose if we didn't want to do the 1st and the 15th, we could look at a Monday, or we could look at but why don't you first, we want to make sure you get all that information, since those are those partner districts. So it sounds like everybody is in agreement with setting a meeting for the rest of the month of April. Mm-hmm. And let's just make sure that it works, and then we'll get communication back out to everybody. Is that good for everyone right now?
Yes.
Yep.
We already know we have 3 Wednesdays in the month of April that are already held for board action items anyway. We have the 8th, we have the 22nd, and we have the board workshop on the 29th right now.
Awesome.
And Patty, can we just, on around the 8th, is there an opportunity to sort of move that board meeting up to 3 o'clock as well?
The whole board meeting, or just that update?
Well, I guess we could do the update and then go into
well,
you would want to, yeah, it's tough because the community may not be able to sort of get on, if we were to go into general session much earlier, people will probably still be at work. So maybe it's just an update, at 3.
And if on that particular day, because of Rita and Mark's obligations on that day, we could try to do our update at a different time potentially on that day, so that we have 2 of the board members who the opportunity to be part of that COVID-19 update. Does that sound good to folks? To accommodate Rita and Mark? Okay. So we'll like plan, you've already got the 3 Wednesdays held no matter what, and then we'll return after. We'll talk about that as Dr. Bill confers with his superintendents. Are there other things that the board would want additionally in terms of communication or in the event of local city action? I think we've all agreed that if there is a pending local city action or a development of that possibility or some additional piece that the public health director and or mayor or the governor would, Dr. Bedell, I think one thing is for you to provide us as much heads up of something percolating if you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where I was going to suggest. I know we have those dates set, and one of the things I said to you, Ms. Master, when we spoke was I still would appreciate if we have to have that flexibility to get together within a 24-hour period, that the board can be flexible enough. So if I get some information and I know, hey, I just got this, it's getting ready to come down the pipeline, we need to have a quick meeting, like, being able to know that folks can pivot so that if we have to do an emergency meeting, we can do that. That was the other piece that I wanted to make sure I shared with the full board, that is still available.
Yep, definitely from my perspective.
Mine as well.
Yeah, thank you.
So that sounds good. And I know that some questions have been raised regarding when we have convened a meeting in less than 24 hours. We know that we have the allowance to do so. It's not our preference, and we'll work to try to meet the 24-hour notice, but we also understand that in a health emergency situation or when there are other governmental authorities who are going to be making decisions, we may not always have that 24 hours, and I think that's what you're saying to us, Dr. Bell.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments on that particular component about what's entailed when we're required to do that kind of flexible response?
And the only thing that I was going to suggest is that in addition to, I'm guessing if we have to respond in a 24-hour period, I'm willing to assist in trying to engage folks, but trying to reach them beyond just email in those scenarios, right? Just to kind of an overall commitment from us to text, call, and that kind of thing, just to put that out there as whether that's the exec board or you or June or a combination of those three, we all try whatever means necessary to get a hold of folks.
That's right, yeah, so that we can make sure everyone receives full and fair notification. It sounds like then we're really good and comfortable with where we are, and so I'm getting that sense. So there's a board member, just as a standing item board member voice. The only, and I'll come back to that in a second in case somebody has something they want to offer, or maybe Dr. Jones has some prognostication she can do on COVID. But on business announcements, everyone, I do want and need you to, I have not sent you, and I apologize, the superintendent question prompts that I need from you, but you do have the form regarding June's evaluation, and then also you have until April 13th to do the board self-evaluation documents. So those are my two announcements, and I'll bounce back. Is there anything else under board member voice?
Patty?
Yes.
And you had mentioned it. I just have to tell you that in between our calls, I had 2 other calls, and I forgot one question, which is the email that I sent. Is that, I know that we were just going to touch on that topic. Is that in the open session in the superintendent's report? Just kind of what are we thinking about forward-looking with regard to our educational plan?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Then I don't need to talk anymore.
All right. This is kind of amazing, guys. We're going to actually be able to adjourn executive session. You'll have time to have a yummy meal, and I'll dive into the candy basket here, Board of Education. And then we will dial back. Yeah, Lorna Doone, second one. And then we will dial back in for our 6:30 meeting, probably if everyone can get on at 6:25, just so we know all the bugs are worked out. Joe Phillips, if you're on, and I think you are, is there any other direction you want to give us for the 6:25 dial-in?
No, just click that other link for open session. We're going to go into that at 6, so if anybody wants to try to call in early to make sure that your tech's working properly, we can troubleshoot any potential issues there. So just wanted to let you know that.
All right.
Remember, our meeting will not begin until 6:30.
All right. Sure, your
All right.
laptop is charged, Manny.
Miss
Thanks,
Manser,
everybody.
Miss Manser, before we hang up,
Yes.
this is Linda. I wanted to share that what we got today was just a reminder from the county that we have to file our preliminary rate by April 8th. We have not received a preliminary assessed valuation. Technically, they don't have to give us anything until July. We've asked for it, but we haven't gotten it yet. So I imagine they're probably not going to give us anything in the way of preliminary AV until when they have to in July, just because of, the fact they're still going through all these appeals and protests and those things.
Linda, are we still getting updates on the cases that have been resolved, so we are able to have kind of a thumb sense of what the AV may be?
Well, they shut down all BOE work a couple of weeks ago, and so we haven't gotten anything since that time. Also, the updates, the most recent update we have is the end of January, so I cannot give you a good sense right now of where we are, really.
But
I'm just not able to get it.
the assessor is still working technically, right? They may not be hearing appeals, but the assessor is still working, correct?
Correct.
So should she not be able to give us a sort of current state in terms of what their backlog is?
So the assessor, that's the collector. So it's a couple different departments now. The assessor's doing paid under protest, and then the collector does paid under protest, the assessor's working with appeals and those kind of things. But I haven't been able to get very recent information, but I will try again this week and see if I can push them a little bit. But yes, they're working.
Yeah. Okay.
So it sounds like we need some kind of formalized request to the leadership of the county so that we can do that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I wonder if we send a letter from the board, right, on school, on our letterhead to the county executive, CCing the assessor, right, all the appropriate sort of leadership folks at the county to say, we request this information and here's why, right? It's really important. We're going through a budget, whatever that list is. Whether or not it'll help, who knows. But I do feel like we need some formal sort of request.
Linda, can you talk with Dr. Bedell about that, put something together?
We will do it.
All right. So
Hey, real quick before we leave. So Mr. Hogan, I just I'm watching what you're doing right now, putting that thing all on your face, and I'm just wondering, is it just me? Is everybody it's a struggle to keep your hands off your face, and I know they're telling you not to do it. Is it Marvia? What's going on here? I don't know how to control it.
It's like clinically proven. Like, for some reason, people can't stop touching their faces. Like, it's we get comfort and we kind of solve their face, so it's hard not to do.
I was just wondering. I'm struggling too. I just saw you doing that, Nate, and it made me think about Talladega Night hands coming up. But all right, I'm gone. I'll see you all at 6:20.
thank you. At this point, this meeting is adjourned, and we will reconvene at 6:25. Thank you, folks.
All right.